Okay, guys, we are going to do something a little bit different on our podcast of Marketing, Management, and Money today. We are going to pick apart a really awesome article that I came across from CBInsights. So if you want to check it out, it's CBInsights.com. And they did some research on why startups fail. And what I really like about this is we all know, I mean, intuitively, some of this stuff is like, well, duh, if you don't have enough cash in your business, you're going to fail. Like that's not all that great insight. But what I love about the article and what they did here is they really kind of quantified it. They put some percentages to, the order of what makes startups fail, and they did this through a study of, I think it was a little over 100 startups. They did some post-mortem interviews on these startups, and they kind of picked apart what some of the common features were. And one of the things from the study, to be fair, is that there's rarely ever one thing that causes the startup to fail. It's usually a combination of things. There's not just that one death strike that's going to just take your startup out and just kind of completely ruin it. But it's going to be a combination. So if you've got a couple of these things creeping in to your business, then you want to watch out for them. Now, another thing that I want to point out is that this study was done specifically for startups. But you'll see very quickly how relatable it is to just small business in general. And so, if you're thinking to yourself, well, I've been in business for several years, I'm looking at this, and through all of my years of working with businesses, absolutely, these are the things that are going to kill your business, whether you're a startup, whether you're not. And so, we're gonna cover the actual data from a startup perspective, but know that this information is totally relatable, regardless the size of your business. So these are your big pitfalls to watch out for, and I think I'll let you, Ryan, kind of kick us off. Why don't we do a bottom up? Let's
sure.
We'll
build
keep
the intensity.
Suspense. Yeah.
All right. So coming into the bottom of the list is a failure to pivot. Just a quick explanation as to what pivoting is. If you are running into a dead end in your small business, or you feel like an idea isn't working out the way that it should, or you come across information or data that you find is pushing you in another direction, moving in that direction, making an adjustment or making a correction so that you stay on the best course for your business, right? So failure to pivot, not doing those things is coming into the bottom of the list as to why small businesses fail. The next one is burnout, which is pretty self-explanatory. Then coming up, we have didn't use network. This one is a little bit interesting to me because it's not something I am inclined to pursue. So we might want to hit on this one a little bit. I might have some questions for you.
Yeah.
Then legal challenges. I think that's a big fear for a lot of entrepreneurs, a monster kind of looming in the background.
Uh-huh.
And then we move into no financing or investor interest. I think that there's some good content there, pretty self-explanatory. Then we kind of move into this next category of a little bit, some reasons with a little bit more gravity behind them. Why don't you dive into those?
Yeah, sure. So, as I'm looking at this study, they've kind of broken it into some chunks. They put some percentages behind it, and the ones that you covered, they were pretty low percentages, not as big of risks that you might see. Yeah. And as you put it, we're getting into things that start to have a little bit more gravity. Failed geographical expansion, so not taking that opportunity to expand when appropriate. And so I think that's really interesting. And then lack passion, just a lack of passion. And I've seen this a lot. This is very similar to that burnout. But if there's just not an interest going on, then, people don't put the time into it. Too much of a lifestyle business, And so that's kind of interesting. This one, again, it's complementary, if you can put it that way, to one that you mentioned right at the beginning. It's a pivot gone bad. So, the business recognizes that they need to pivot, but instead of, pivoting correctly, they actually
course correct straight into the iceberg.
Captain Starboard.
Yeah. For all
straight ahead.
For all you young'uns, go back and watch Titanic. You'll learn a thing or two.
Then you get into the next is disharmony among team or investors, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Your business becomes your family, and you can kind of picture not quite getting along with the family, and then a loss of focus, just being spread too thin in the direction that you're going. So that's kind of like your mid-range threats. They're definitely there, definitely things that you need to worry about. And now we're going to get into, I think this brings us to the top 10.
Number 10 on the list is a product mistimed. That one is super interesting to me. It's really, really unfortunate, I think, in a lot of times, because a lot of people have great ideas, but then it's just not quite the right time for it. You need another complementary piece of technology to come out first, or something else in the market to happen prior to you being able to launch your product or idea.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't work out.
I'm going to want to jump back to this one and talk about it for a second, but let's go through
these
the full list.
These next ones are getting good. They're getting meaty. So then following that up is ignoring your customers, poor marketing, product without a business model, user unfriendly product. I realize I glazed over those, but they're pretty straightforward, but there's some pretty big deals there.
Yeah.
Like, it makes me wonder what in the world is going wrong. Like, I would love to go back and read through some of these postmortems and see when somebody was like, we had a user unfriendly product. It's like, well, if you were doing some of these other things right, how did you miss that mark? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've been on some websites that are definitely user unfriendly.
Oh, for sure.
And so I can
for
see
sure.
that. So
anyway,
all right. So here we are with the top 5, and I'm going to put the percentages to them. And these percentages represent the number of businesses in the study that this was one of the leading causes of them going out of business. So the first one was pricing and cost issues. Getting that price point wrong, what a big deal. And I think it's interesting that it puts cost issue there too, because a lot of times when you're really trying to calculate those margins and you get off on those margins, and that's why, we've done a full episode on calculating the margins just because it's that important. In fact, we've done episodes on a lot of these because they're that important. So get out competed, 19%. You just came in second or seventh, and just
second or seventh.
Not the right team. This one, there's a lot that could be discussed there, but when you just don't have the right people, they're not working together, and it's that's tough. That's 23%. Ran out of cash. Coming in at number 2 is ran out of cash, which is interesting because I think a lot of people expect cash flow to be number 1. It came in at 29%, but the number 1 is no market need, 42%. People just don't need what you want to sell. And I use the term want to sell because, as entrepreneurs, we're passionate about what we do. We're passionate about our interests. But if the market really isn't demanding it, it's just not there. And I do see that one a lot. And so I'm not surprised that it comes in at 42%. But so, okay, we went through that pretty quickly. There's no way that in this episode we're going to be able to delve into all of these. But let's touch on a couple of them.
Sure.
And see what we think. So what kind of stands out to you?
I feel like there are a few of these that are tied together, but like I said before, the user unfriendly product, that one kind of strikes me as a little bit odd. And maybe this is just me coming from a marketing background, but this also ties into the no market need. This ties into poor marketing, ignoring customers, product mistimed, several of these that we listed out.
Sure.
But if you're keeping your finger on the pulse of some of these key market items, these are big things to miss. And so, I mean, I realize as a startup, as an entrepreneur, you're tied up in so many different things. You have so much going on that it's sometimes it's easy to miss some of the really big things. But if you're full on launching a product and you're putting tons of money and time and effort into it, and you've got a whole team behind it and everything, you would think that there would be some method or some effort that was made to validate this product or idea, right? And then that's something, and we talk about this all the time on this podcast, that you have to continually do these things, right? Like you can't just say, oh, looks like people want our product, we're going to go sell it for the next 50 years and expect nothing to change.
Yeah. But
you have to come back in and you have to check in and you have to say, okay, are we still hitting that mark? Are we still resonating with people the way that we did initially? Has there been anything else come out into the market that has changed the market? Do we need to pivot in any way, shape, or form? I mean, so many of these things are tied together and simply are corrected, or you hit the mark because you're looking at what your market is after.
And I really want to touch on, you've already touched on it, but I want to kind of hammer on the point of unfriendly. I mean, think about the description of unfriendly. Like, it's not saying that it's a bad product. It's not saying that the product doesn't work. It's saying that it's not friendly, meaning that, you've got kind of this taste in your mouth, and you just. So I was trying to take my wife out to dinner the other night, and with all of the COVID pandemic stuff going on, it's hard to know what restaurants are, dine in, which ones are takeout only, what kind of restrictions they have. And so we're getting online, and, we're able to find out what's open, but we weren't able to find out whether there was, dine in or whether it was takeout only. And we were looking for a dine in option, and, it was just unfriendly because it was the fourth restaurant that we went to that we finally found, a place that we could sit down.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of this really in my mouth with that experience. And so I think about that. And I get, that was brought on by a pandemic, not necessarily the business's fault, but they still could provide a solution for, I guarantee I'm not the first person who's tried to figure out, hey, are you dine in or takeout only?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I had a very similar experience where I was on vacation with my family. We went out to eat, and we had called ahead to a few different places saying, hey, do you do dine in? Do we need to make reservations, or can we just come in? Oh, there's no way, you guys come on in. Like, to me, it wasn't a question of like, I know that there are limits with the pandemic. Like, we can only have 20 people in our restaurant now because of limitations,
Sure.
right?
Right.
So we show up. No joke. This happened back to back 4 times in a row where it was like, oh, you have 5 people in your party? We can only take people or a party with 4 people. It's like, dude, one of my people in my party is under 2 years old. Does that really count as a 5th person? Happened 4 times in a row. And finally, we show up at this place, and they're like, yeah, we could take you, no big deal. It might be a 5 or 10 minute wait. And we show up, and they're like, oh, things must have changed since you called in, because, in the last half an hour, things have gotten really crazy. And we were like, we called 2 minutes ago. We were around the corner. And it was like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll make some accommodations for your 5-person party. And it's like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just unfriendly.
And so it's like we show up at these places, and it's like, what's wrong with me?
Right.
Like, I'm not sick.
Yeah. And the product was fine, the service was fine, the location was fine.
I would love to give you my money. I wanted what you had,
but it was unfriendly.
Yep.
And so
no accommodations were made otherwise, right?
Right.
And I guarantee I'm not the only person in that market with a very, very similar problem, right?
Yeah. And
anyway.
so Super interesting. Okay, I want to jump to another one, and this one's kind of interesting. This product mistimed. Now, oftentimes on our podcast, when we use the term product, we mean product and service. And so, I'm going to start by talking about services that are mistimed, but then I'm also going to, talk about products that are mistimed. I was working with a business once that was trying to do graduation photography, and so it's graduation day. Everyone wants to get their picture taken with their family. It's a big moment to celebrate, and so they were going to go do this photography. Well, instead of thinking ahead of time, they went and handed out these coupons for photography services at graduation.
Oops.
And not a single person contacted the business. I mean,
I bet
it was a huge mistiming. It's like people have already made their plans.
Right.
Like they don't want it, 3 days after graduation. They want it 3 days before graduation or a week before graduation. And, so it was a huge mistiming. But the other thing that I've seen a lot with businesses when they do products, so development of products, it's a very expensive process. It's a very time-consuming process.
Right.
It's not easy. You look at these simple widgets and you think, oh man, that wouldn't take anything to produce, and it's like, no, it takes a lot to produce.
Yeah. Right.
And so, oftentimes these projects get delayed, and sometimes you'll see where when a project gets delayed, but the business is still, they're just like, we've invested so much time, we've invested so much money, we're going to go through with it. And it's like, well, there are now 7 other competitors in the market. At the time we started this, it was blue ocean, there was plenty of space, but today it's crowded and it's highly competitive.
Yeah.
And so, I've seen a lot of mistiming of the market when it's, this whole idea that, they ignore the sunk costs are sunk costs, and they're just like, no, we've got to recoup our investment. I'm like, sometimes you cut your losses.
Yeah. You just let it go.
You don't win every single time in business, and
right.
So you want to hedge the bets. You want to win the majority of the times. You want to beat the house, but you don't have to constantly be successful in order to consistently be successful.
Right. So one of the other ones that grabbed me that I'm actually surprised that you didn't grab was
I was giving you the moment, the opportunity.
Oh, you're so kind.
Yeah.
Except I don't want it. It's all yours.
No. You got it.
One of the top reasons, this is number 2, of why startups fail is that they run out of cash.
Yeah, it's huge. Here's the thing.
I feel like there's so many different things that can go wrong in a small business. I don't know whether to be like super harsh and critical about this one or it's just that I don't understand it. It's like if you aren't budgeting your money to the point where you're like, hey, we're coming up on this. We gotta hit this before, the next 2 months and we're out of money. Or it's like funding gets pulled. I don't know. This one's interesting to me.
Can I share something? Yeah. Okay. Just stay with me for a second here because this is this will connect back.
Sure.
So I get this call one night. It's a good friend of mine. He calls me up, and you can tell he's pretty distraught. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? You're calling me at kind of an odd hour. You're distraught. Obviously something's going on. And he's like, my wife wants a divorce. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, And he really was hurt.
Sure.
And he made this comment to me. He said, I always looked at others when they're just like, I didn't see it coming. And I was like, how could you not see it coming? Like your wife wants a divorce and you're just like, what? And he's like, but honestly, I didn't see it coming. And I feel like this is how cash flow is in businesses. Like I told you, it was going to come back. Okay. Like everyone who, they look at other businesses and they're like, how could you be so stupid? You like ran out of cash? Seriously? Why didn't you plan ahead? Why didn't you just put a little bit in the bank? But when it actually happens to the business and they're just like, I didn't see it coming. And that's the problem with it is, there are so many things that can, that can really just catch you off guard when it comes to cash flow, that if you're not constantly staying on top of that, then you look at it, almost a third of businesses that fail are, they're running out of cash.
So basically what you're saying is I would definitely fall into that category if I were at this on my own. I didn't see it coming. That would be me.
Maybe. But okay. In the time remaining, let's talk about this top one.
Okay.
No market need. I like to use the terminology no market demand. 42%, almost half of all
that's
business.
Huge.
Yeah. They just don't have a demand. And this is one that you're always harping on.
Yeah. Well, again, to me, this comes back to some of those key things that in terms of small business entrepreneurship, it's really not that hard. It's not that difficult. It's just a matter of doing it, right? And I suppose that goes for any one of these 20 reasons why startups fail. But as long as you're staying on top of being in touch with your customer base, I think that but many of these are
how many businesses really are
alleviated. What's that?
How many businesses really are staying close to their customers? At a point, they probably were.
Right. Well, but that's the thing. And again, we've talked about this so many times on this podcast. Is like, yeah, you do this up front. There are a lot of small businesses and startups that don't do this up front, but you do this up front and then you continually do it. You continually check in with your market. You continually talk to those customers and see what it is that you're doing good for them, what it is that you're missing the mark on. Mm-hmm. And then you evaluate. This is what I set out to do. This is what my customer is saying. Are we still on point? Are we deviating? Are we doing something different? Do we want to be doing something different? You have to take those personal goals and aspirations into perspective and say, are we hitting the mark? And if you're not, then you adjust.
Yeah.
Then you start to look at some of these other things like, do we have the right people on the team? Do we have cost structured appropriately? What are we doing for our marketing efforts? Are we mistimed? Are we losing focus? All these things, right? Again, I understand that entrepreneurs and small business owners are incredibly busy, but that's why as you grow, you build teams, right? Yeah. You start to bring people on who you can trust to help you decipher through all this stuff and say, yeah, we're still on the mark. We're still headed in the right direction. Or, hey, red flag, our top customer says we're not doing it for him anymore. Ding, ding, ding. Here's the siren. Let's do something about it.
So as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, and maybe this is just how I'm looking at it, but I think check your ego at the door.
Oh, hands down.
Like,
dude, I feel like that should be one of the reasons on this is like seriously my own ego.
Like, oh, I know what my customers want. I don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
I got this. Yeah. Don't worry, we've got plenty of cash. I got this. Oh yeah, we're a perfect team. We always get along. We love each other. You know, like we got this. Oh, no one's gonna outperform us. Well, we got this. Like,
I mean, all joking aside, like you get rolling, you get some momentum behind you. You have a great team, and all of these things can be going right. Mm-hmm. But that confidence can be so deceiving. So deceptive.
But you have to have the confidence because otherwise you're just going to get beat up. You know, markets are brutal.
Right.
Customers are brutal. Mm-hmm. And so you have to go in with confidence. You have to be a little bit arrogant. Like, yes, my business is good enough that you should pay me a lot of money for it.
Yeah, right. See, now we're getting into the deep stuff that I like. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. So all you listeners out there, you're just going to have to hold on for part 2. And we'll dive into all of the philosophy of all things small business and entrepreneurship.
Love it.
So look out for part 2 where we look more into some of these different reasons. And I want to personally touch on some of the fixes for some of these things. If you notice some of these things are starting to happen, what do you do?
Exactly.
Anyway, take care, guys. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks.
Take control of your business today. Go to tabletwise.com and search marketing management and money for the clarity you've always wanted. Be sure to stay tuned for new episodes on the first and third Wednesdays of every month, and make sure to subscribe to be notified when we release bonus content such as interviews and short discussions.